Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Coffee and Counseling Podcast. Before we begin, just a brief disclaimer. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and does not take the place of therapy. We hope you enjoyed today's session. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session of Coffee and Counseling, where we don't spill the tea, but the coffee will be piping hot while we talk about all things counseling. We're your hosts, Rachel Steinhardt
and Stephanie Van Shake, and today we're going to talk about social media and mental health, the pros and cons of social media on your mental health, as well as how you can protect your mental health while using social media. Before we get on into it, we want to check in with each other. What is, Rachel, your one high and one low from this past week?
Okay, so I'll start off with my high and my high and low are intertwined because Passover is coming up, which all you Jewish mommies out there feel my stress and anxiety. It's so much work, Steph. If you were in my house right now, you would just, I don't know, say a prayer for me because it's so crazy. It's like the best way I can explain it to you is spring cleaning with severe OCD. And like I'm a mental health professional and I'm not throwing that term out. It really makes you feel like you're developing a problem sometimes because you have to be so ritualistic and adamant about every tiny detail in the cleaning process because I don't know if you know how intense for observant Orthodox Jews Passover can be, but like there is literally not allowed to be a crumb of any of the foods that we're not allowed to eat anywhere in your entire household. And if you have it in your household, it has to be like separated in a section and then like covered and then like labeled. It's like a whole thing that to people who don't do it sounds not so. And to try to explain it to anyone who doesn't do it makes you feel like you're crazy. And it's just, you have to rebuy all of your kitchen items, all of your ingredients, because the ones that you currently have are not allowed to be used over Passover, which is a whole other insanity I can explain to you another time. But it's insane because while you're doing all of this and like flipping over your whole house, you still have to like do your work and be a parent and be a person and be like whatever your rules are in life, they're still going. So I would say like my low is just figuring out how to manage the time to do all of this when I'm so tired as it is. And I would guess the high is just there's also a an upside of like the planning and the excitement. Like I know, Stephanie, when you were planning the Christmas dinner that you were going to host with your family, there was a lot of excitement that came with it and making the menu and making the house look pretty. And so we have the same thing. It's really exciting. And a lot, many people, I would say most people try to really get their entire family together. It's a really big holiday. So that part of it's like really exciting, getting to see family I haven't seen in almost a year, but it's very overwhelming. So I would say my high and my low are a little bit intertwined, but where are you holding, Steph? How was your week?
Yeah, so it's funny because a lot of times I find too when I'm thinking about, okay, what are some highs, what are some lows, I find that a lot of times I can see them being intertwined as well. And I just want to say, I always, ever since I met Rachel, I'm always fascinated to learn about, and I learn something pretty much every time I talk to you about, I always am fascinated to learn about different cultures, different religious observances. And so thank you for that. That was really interesting. And hopefully everyone learned something new. That's always a fun time. And yeah, absolutely. I can identify with Christmas. That is a big season that's really stressful, even though it's so wonderful and exciting. So, and if any of you are not already following Rachel on Instagram, I know you've been posting a lot about doing all the things, yet, still doing your work and still getting ready for Passover and how this is all working in your life. I know you've been posting a lot on your stories, so make sure that you are following Rachel over on her Instagram. And for my high and low of the week, so I just mentioned it to Rachel before this podcast, is as at the time of this recording, like you said, it's the week before Passover, or it's the week of approaching Passover, right? So you guys can figure that out, the timing of this recording. And it's about a month out of daylight savings time, and I'm still so messed up from it. And it's not because of the hour that was lost. It's just my body clock does not like shifting this much.
Doesn't want to get with the program.
It does not want to work with me. It does not want to get with the program whatsoever. So my sleep has been a bit messy, and I have a headache right now, but it's okay. We will get through this. And yeah, so that's a low. And I had a headache last night too. That wasn't fun. But a high is that I had a visit from my sister and her family, the one with the 4 kids. So that was
That's
really,
so exciting.
yeah,
How was that?
it was really nice. They were driving through, as it's so funny how big Florida is. It's such a
Yeah.
huge state that I swear they were driving through Florida pretty much the entire time. They went to Texas to visit family. So on the way back, they stopped here to visit. And it was just like a 24-hour period, but it's always nice to see my nieces and nephew. And I wish I got to see them more. I wish I got to see my nephews over in New York more as well. But it was a fun time, chaotic as per usual. That might be might be contributing to my headache and my sleep over the last couple of days. But nevertheless, it was a fun time. And it was really nice to see them and learn about how everything's been going for them as well. So, with that being said, we want to jump on into the session today. And I wanted to start with why we wanted to cover this. And we have to recognize that we live in a world where we wake up and almost all of us immediately reach for our phones. We swipe up or whatever we're doing, open it up, and then we are inundated with curated perfection and also at the same note, complete chaos. And we start to have our brains completely taken over by the notifications that we're getting on the phones and the news that we're getting. And it's just so overwhelming. And we really want to address that. And today we're going to be diving a lot into how social media impacts our mental health in both subtle and significant ways. And it really matters because we need to become more educated consumers of social media. That's the language that I like to use with my clients or when talking about this concept on some of my other platforms. You don't need to quit social media completely, as much as that would probably be the best thing. Most of us can't do that. And I don't know about you, Rachel. I know that this is really big for parents. It's so frustrating because a lot of entities have their news updates on social media. So like my township, for an example, they have like everything going on. All the
Mhm.
neighbors are constantly, oh, this was found. And I don't have, thank God, I don't have a personal social media, and I got rid of it about a decade ago. And I could say it's not for everyone, but it definitely was a positive on my mental health. But it does come with its consequences almost, that I'm
Absolutely.
not up to date in that regard, and I might not know of something that is happening that I probably should know about, whether it's a good thing or a not so good thing. And it's really frustrating that that is all, our lives are intertwined with social media, and we just have to accept that that's the world that we're in, and we have to become more intentional with how we engage with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you're saying that, I've literally been having like flashbacks of my last year, 2 years, especially since I know for anyone who is Zionistic or pro-Israel, especially the Jewish world, since October 7th, we're all glued to our phones, seeing things that we're never going to be able to unsee, hearing things we're never going to be able to unhear. And, a lot of my therapeutic space with my Jewish clients has been about navigating that, because we're all like, we need to know the news. A lot of us have family there, family that's serving there. It's quite literally life and death. Holding our breath to hear what's going on with hostages, with bodies that were found. It's very difficult because, and I'm sure anyone who just watches the news in general can empathize with understanding that, you can hear something and it can kind of shake your day sometimes. And anyone in the space where I'm talking about dealing with the horrors of being a Jew in today's world and dealing with what's going on in Israel, it is really, truly a double-edged sword because we get to feel that we're part of it and know the things that we need to know. But it's also, horrendous. Like, I remember when it first came out, I was pretty late into a pregnancy at the time. And my mom and my husband were like, don't look at your phone. Don't look at your phone. And I kept looking and it was just worse. And I couldn't stop crying and screaming and panicking. And it was absolutely hard, which is so unhealthy for anyone, let alone somebody who's pregnant. I can remember so many instances where I was out and about and just going, we had to start trying to get back into the rhythm of our lives because it's clearly still going on. And how many times I was in the middle of doing something, I was at a family event or a celebration, and we all looked at our phones, found something out about the war, and that's it. It was over. Like whatever we were doing was done. Like, it really is crazy the impact of social media, because had we not had our phones in that moment, we just wouldn't have found out until later. And like we would have continued whatever it was for that time. So it really is crazy, whether it's news, and the way it's just such a double-edged sword. Also, it's something I think about a lot with physical and mental health as well. Everyone has become a doctor diagnosing themselves with everything under the sun. And I think it can be really scary when you find out about disorders or things that you didn't even know existed. And it's such a wonderful thing to create awareness, especially for the person out there who is suffering with some rare thing, or a family member who's suffering with some rare thing that they never even knew existed. And now you know what it is because some random person posted it on TikTok or Instagram or whatever it is. And that's incredible. You can save someone's life. And on the other hand, you have someone sitting there genuinely like scared to go to sleep because they're scared of the 750 different ways that you can die that they just found out on Instagram, And so it's a lot. It's a large pill to swallow. It's a lot for the brain to process. It's so much information that sometimes it feels like we cannot turn off. And I think navigating that space is something we're going to forever be working on. I think that with mental health, there's so many parts to this, and we'll be talking about that throughout this episode. But, from things that are very diet cultured and body negative, and things that can just make an anxious person go on a complete field day, things that are severely, severely traumatic and triggering for someone with PTSD, things that can definitely help hold someone into a depression. And Stephanie, I know that I learned this in graduate school, and it's something I completely disagree with. And I really wonder what your thoughts are. But I remember we were talking about suicidality and our suicidality. Yeah, I don't know why I just feel like I said that so weird. And our professor was kind of like, looking it up is never really going to change anything, because if somebody wants to, hurt themselves or kill themselves, they're going to do it anyway. And that's not really like such a large, like, you shouldn't be scared to talk to the client about that, because you're not going to put ideas in someone's head that was never there. And I truly disagree. I really do think that, yes, if someone's in a depression, obviously they're struggling, looking at it might not help. It might give them some new ideas of how to do it, but it's not really going to help. I do actually see people learning, especially adolescents, oh my gosh, learning about different ways to, whether it's making their body smaller, whether it's hurting themselves, whether it's, thinking about suicide as an escape when maybe that wasn't really the first thing on their mind. I do think people can gain ideas of what to do that's negative, seriously, seriously dangerous to mental health. But I wonder if specifically on that, what are your thoughts?
I think it always needs to be handled in with such kin gloves when we're talking about something so sensitive. And of course, one of the things that we need to be doing in sessions, which we do, is that if there's any indication, whether it's so forthright or hinted at, we do need to, of course, do our suicide assessment and making sure that we believe and have faith that this client is going to be okay from one session to the next. And I do believe, though, when it comes to social media and just the online space in and of itself, I've had more than a few clients who have suffered in the way that you're talking about, whether it is, especially we talked about it last week that both of us specialize in eating disorders. It's one of our specialties. I have seen this so prevalent in the eating disorder world where there's so many different online communities to promote the disorder and give ideas as to how to behave, how to be misleading around other people and or bully you and with your consent too, which is a very strange thing, bully you to help you be inspired to do harmful behaviors to yourself. And I've seen this to the point of eating disorder symptoms and behaviors, but I've also seen it where it has gone further, where there was ideas of suicide placed in someone's head or just making them feel so worthless and small where that has come up for them. And I think that with anything when it comes to social media or online space, that it can go either way. And sometimes it can be really helpful if you do have some thoughts or ideas that you might feel a little bit better seeing that other people struggle in this way. But it's important that the community is a helpful community and not someone or community that's damaging. So something that we could talk about too, like suicidal ideation versus suicidal intent, which are very two sides of the same coin, but also very different. And many people might struggle with suicidal ideation, but not necessarily suicidal intent. And those are different things. But when some people might look it up online, maybe it could be helpful for some people to realize that, oh, I'm not actually intending to do this, but other people also struggle in these ways. So it's in a way normalizing, which is both positive and negative. Just it depends on how it's being translated in someone's mind and what they do with that information. It could be someone, okay, now I see that I struggle with it. Now I know that this might be the pathway that I need in order to get help versus, oh, I can go down this and it's totally okay and normal for me to do something this damaging. It's tough.
Yeah, it really is. I think that the community on social media could be so beautiful and can be so damaging. It's really scary the power that social media really has. And truly, I mean, it's funny. A lot of the statistics talks about adolescents, how addicted they are to it, how much it impacts their mental health, their safety. I think the statistic now is most adolescents are on social media for about 5 hours a day. And there is, at this point, there are several studies showing that it does increase depression, anxiety, and various other mental health disorders. Also creating the space for, cyberbullying, creating the space for, just dangerous situations with minors and sexual activity, things that they're exposed to that they can never unsee, unhear. So it is quite scary, especially for parents, just knowing that this is a thing, knowing that they have multiple ways of outsmarting you, no matter how many child blocks you put on.
Mm-hmm.
So these things are very scary, but, as you're thinking, there are so many beautiful parts about it too. You hear success stories and you hear, like what you and I do, where we are constantly on our social media pages trying to post positivity and light and coping skills, and techniques and different strategies to help people get out of dark holes, to help people with different obstacles that they're facing in their life, to create that toolbox of mental health. And so we're really taking the bad with the good.
Mhm.
But I do think that there's so much importance around the awareness of what the good and bad actually is, so that we can better protect ourselves. And, so everyone listening, how to take the appropriate measures to make sure it's helping you more than it's harming you.
Mhm.
I know, Steph, you and I have been talking about this for years, the endless, unrealistic expectations that we put on ourselves, that people who are posting are putting out there, forgetting that the picture that we're seeing, the video that we're seeing is, as you said, like curated perfection,
Mhm.
and not realizing there's an entire story behind it. I really, really love when, maybe this comes up on because of my algorithm, but it will be like a family with like this beautiful picture and the children are all smiling and the parents look so in love, and it will say like, and then they'll post in the next, um like slide, it will be like a reel of what it took them to get that shot, like
Mhm.
screaming at their kids, "We'll give you whatever you want, just freaking smile for 3 seconds," like, and like her husband like screaming at her husband, like, "Please just stop making funny faces for 2 minutes of your life," and
Mhm.
just all of this insanity to get this seemingly perfect picture.
Mhm.
And we really just need more of that, because we look at these 2 seconds, we have no idea what's the story behind that picture. There could be 1,000 tears behind a smile. There could be, you know, a million fights behind what seems to be this like perfect family. So many crazy stories. I'm never going to forget one time I had a friend, and we were all kind of like still in the beginning stages of getting married. And she was telling me how we were talking about spouses who post a lot on social media. And in my private life, my spouse and I really don't do that at all. And my friend and I were talking, and she's like, "I have to tell you the craziest story. There was this girl that she's really good friends with that had posted this like absolutely beautiful tribute to her husband for their anniversary. And it was just this like beautiful love letter with this array of pictures. And she said to me, she's like, they haven't been talking for over a month, and they've been separated, and she's sleeping in my house in my basement."
Oh my gosh.
And in the middle of that, she like posted this post. And
Mhm.
I never forgot when she said that to me, because I was like, wow, like you really, really cannot believe everything you see on social media. And it's so scary because, that doesn't really have to mean anything to anyone. But for someone that maybe is struggling, or maybe is like, I don't have that perfect partner yet. And like, what the hell, what's wrong with me that I don't have it? And looking at this post and being like, that person just has it figured out. And why don't I have it figured? It's just crazy what an image, a sentence, a reel, whatever can do, what someone can take away from that. I wonder if anything stands out for you, Steph, that maybe you've ever seen as a professional or in your personal life on social media that maybe was kind of dropped this bomb for you.
Yeah. So a couple things that come to mind is one, I remember sitting one time in one of my church services, and the pastor had said, and put in these words, and I never stopped using them since, that we compare our bloopers to everyone else's highlight reels. And
Yes.
that's generally how it is on social media. And I do want to touch a little bit more on that in a bit. But something else that has been on my mind since you started talking about this, one, we have to admit that social media is not real life. And I could give you a few examples off the top of my head where we have evidence to that. And I'm big into I'm very intrigued by true crime. I enjoy listening to true crime podcasts, and I'm all over the Dateline episodes and things like that. So something that comes to mind is a very famous or infamous case that many of us know is the Gabby Petito case. And the Gabby Petito case, I believe it was in 2021, and they started a YouTube channel. They only posted one video at the time of her unfortunate murder. That there was, it looked perfect. The video, if you ever watch it, if you're into true crime, you absolutely have seen it. It looks like their lives are absolutely impeccable, like van life romanticized, and everyone should do it. They're madly in love. It just looks amazing. And there was actually a Netflix documentary not too long
I'm waiting to see it. My husband will not watch it with me. He's like, something is wrong with you, Rachel. Why do you want to watch this? But I want to watch it so badly. I think it's the therapist in me that's like, I need to dissect this story.
It's the psychology of it, first off, and I think that there's like a gendered thing too. It seems like
Yeah, what is it with us women and like what is wrong with
I have theories, I really do, but I love the mental part of it, like understanding like what happened, why would someone do this, and understanding that like what might lead people to it. But I think I don't know. Like I have so many theories, but it's something that really piques my interest, and it's something that I think we can point to different examples that it's just not. You have to watch the documentary. In
Yeah. By the way, listeners, all of our ladies, if you are a true crimes fan or just like are into crazy thrillers, can you let us know if this is just us or like what is
normalize this for
happening?
us.
Let us know. Also, let us know what your favorite like true crime watch is.
Yes, or podcast. So it's definitely worth a watch. And one of the things that's very different that we haven't seen before up until this documentary, which is why I bring it up, is they do show never before seen clips of the unedited version when she was recording for the YouTube video. And you could see very, very different their interactions and just their demeanor, and it's just awful. And obviously it's a whole awful situation, but I hear this I've listened to quite a few podcast episodes or videos on different examples of this, not to this level of infamy, of course, but I believe there was a TikToker who always was posting couple content that was murdered by her boyfriend, and it's just really pretty awful that these things happen. But all this to say is that social media isn't real life, and those are some of the most concrete examples that I could give that most people would be able to see, just to remind themselves that it's probably never to that extreme, or often not to that extreme, but even the little things too that might pack a punch when you see it. You can't compare yourself to it because you have no idea how real it is. It could be completely fake. And oftentimes we see that that's the big thing that's happening.
Yeah, it's scary. I mean, and this might be a whole different section of thought, but the whole concept of AI now is just its own universe, its own. I don't know if I want to call it a monster. I'm not the biggest fan. It scares me a little bit.
I know we've talked about this.
We've talked about this, guys. This is a different conversation, but it's just grown into its own life. Like truly, that's what I think it is. Like social media, and we're really talking about all forms here: Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. There are, whatever it is, Twitter. Like there are so many forums. There are probably multiple forums that I also don't know about. But it's just everywhere. It's like you can't even escape it.
Yeah, it is. And I think that it really has taken on a life of its own. And it's really unfortunate too, because I was just thinking earlier, and I have no idea why. I think it's because on my YouTube suggestions, it comes up old nostalgia things. And I remember, maybe I'm really dating myself, but I remember our family getting our first computer and like the AOL chat rooms that
Oh
you
my
would
gosh,
chat.
yes.
Yeah, it was so much fun, and no one really knew at that time what damage it could cause or whatnot. And thank God, and maybe we were all just really understanding the extent of the internet, that no one really thought of it and nothing really happened, at least that I knew of, or we just weren't as connected, so we didn't even know the dangers that happened at that point. But I remember my best friend and I at the time, we would be in the chat rooms, and we would completely make up personas, and it was the most fun thing to do. We would be like, oh, we're rich teens living in California, and we were 9 years old on Long Island and just best friends. And it's to that extent, though, it was harmless at that point. But now it seems like that is almost what people have moved into. Like, what persona can I create and put out to the internet? And I think it also causes some identity, like a lot of imposter syndrome, I'm sure. But I hear a lot, especially with like family vloggers and whatnot, that a lot of times there's a persona put out there, and these people aren't really liked people. Like people who know them in real life don't seem to really connect with them very well. They seem like they'd be your best friend when you watch them on camera, but then when you hear some stories or you see clips of them in other areas, they might not be that. And it's a little concerning how we might be able to move into a different identity almost, and not in a positive way, I don't think.
Yeah. I will disagree with you though, because I think even at that point,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't so innocent. There were so many stories of kids getting kidnapped, like stories of and this is, I think, a lot more for minors, like what they were exposed to, putting themselves in dangerous situations, random people getting a hold of kids' accounts, telling them to do all kinds of crazy things, telling them, if, or like convincing them that they were their age and they were in another high school and that they were dating now and that they should meet them somewhere, and all kinds of scary, crazy stories.
I guess
Um,
I only viewed, or I completely
this
went to
is
this
this is where
news.
I listened to the news too much. My mom would like truly stuff this into our heads so much because we were barely allowed to touch the internet.
Mhm.
Um, and I think, I mean, I'm really curious for anyone else who grew up in a really conservative home or an Orthodox home or anything like that. Because I do believe this is a little bit more common, but like, what was your exposure growing up? Because I remember, like, I would, for 2 minutes, maybe, and this was the most scandalous thing on earth, like, in eighth or ninth grade, like sends an AOL message to a friend from school, and that was it. Like that
Mhm.
was it. But I remember even that, like my mom and my family being so scared of what that can turn into, or who could get a hold of your accounts, who can contact you through it. And I remember actually one time a stranger they were able to message me, actually messaged me something very inappropriate. I was very young and I was very scared. And I remember like I didn't sign back in for a really long time.
Ooh.
But yeah,
I
I was
was
very,
even
very scared. I
living.
mean, like clearly at that point they couldn't get to me. I didn't give them any information, but still it was kind of like, oh my gosh, the stories are real. It's happening.
Yeah.
I was so little, and it was such a scary concept. But
Mhm.
talking about some of the scary parts of this as an adult, we don't notice how much of this we are internalizing, how much we are choosing as right or wrong, things that we're looking to for health advice, for life advice, how we deal with our relationships, how we deal with our families, how we deal with our mental well-being, the structure of how we work. Everything is so impacted by social media. um, I can't even begin to tell you how much of my clients, of Steph's clients, how many people, if they already had an eating disorder, had it be exacerbated and just was so much worse through social media. If they didn't have one, have developed one from following things on social media, different ideas, different quote unquote tips and tricks to get their dream body or whatever it was, thinking that this was going to give them the job, the life, the friends, the whatever it is that they wanted. This, what we call quite literally the diet culture. And this really very much connects to a concept that, I think most people learn in like Psych 101, but just to refresh everybody, this concept of groupthink. Um, and Steph, I'd really like to hear your thoughts on that. But I know for me, especially in today's world with, without getting too much into it, but just with the concept of politics, with beliefs, with different ideologies on different things, groupthink, excuse me, has really turned into just almost like a control room for the world and how everyone thinks and how they run their lives based on that. And it's truly become a little bit disturbing. But I
Yeah.
know, Steph, you and I talk about this a little bit. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
There's a study that I think is really important to bring up here that it shows the concept of groupthink. And for anyone who's ever dabbled in psychology, like Psychology 101, I'm sure you've heard about this study, but it's where you put a bunch of people in a room, and most of the people, the majority of the people, let's say there's 10 people, 9 of those people are controls in that room, which they know what the experiment is and they are in on the experiment. And then there's one person that comes in that doesn't know what the experiment is. And everyone is asked, they put 3 lines up on a board, and everyone is asked which one is longer. And there's one that's obviously longer. And they have all the people in the room, the controls, give the wrong answer. And you can see the facial expressions and the just the overall demeanor of the person who's not in on it, looking super confused. And oftentimes what we found is that they, at the end, you could tell that they knew that that wasn't the right line. However, they would answer the same as everyone else, even though it was so obvious and clear that one line was significantly longer than the other line. And whatever, we could probably dive in really deeply as to why that might be, and why we tend to not want to be separate from the group. And I think that there's some evolutionary psychology in there as well. And it's a really scary thing, because I think that social media has made it even more powerful. And I think it's a really great thing to have community in what your beliefs are. But instead, what we're finding is groups of echo chambers where people feel incredibly, I wouldn't use the word empowered, but just maybe not willing or open to seeing anything that might disagree with the group, even if it's the truth. And it's just it's really tough. And I think that one of the things too that we've seen in social media over the last decade is a big unfortunate thing, is families and friends separating and being divided based on politics. And it's such a horrible thing that's happening, that we're seeing. And I think people in a way like get empowered where they don't, I don't know, they get blinded that like that person 2 years ago, you love that person, and now all of a sudden they're evil or they're a complete idiot and you don't want to associate with them. It's really damaging, and it's damaging relationships too.
Yeah, it's hard, and by the way, for whoever doesn't know what groupthink is, just to explain it in really short terms, it's just you essentially changing what you think because everyone else is convincing you that you're wrong and are all seemingly agreeing. So you kind of hop on their train. And exactly what the words are, it's a group thought. So your individual thought in that kind of gets lost. And the more people jump on that train, the more powerful it becomes. And it could be a train going absolutely nowhere with a thought that's absolutely inaccurate, but that's what it is. And I find it so interesting. I did not look at the statistics on this. I am curious to after we record this podcast, but to look at posts that are done where the comments are turned off, because that's an option now, if they don't do as well. Because what I've noticed is half, I would say even more than half of social media is people getting entertained by the comments section. And what you'll see is within the comments section, you have different groups forming of what they think regarding that post. And you'll always see that like 1, 2, 3, 20, 50, depending on how large the following is, that the smaller amount, that brave person that comes in, and they might be totally wrong and they might be totally obnoxious, but still it takes some bravery to be that one person that thinks differently and comes in and says something that's completely different from everyone else is saying. And you see the like entire comment section absolutely attack them. And don't get me wrong, a lot of the time it's totally validated, and like there are people that are just horrific people and say horrific things, and like I get it. I'm not trying to like take away from people fighting for the right thing here, but just this concept of groupthink and this concept of like losing your own voice in the ocean of voices that are just louder than yours and don't allow you to hear your own thoughts anymore.
Mhm.
And that's really what a lot of social media creates. It's kind of scary. And I see it come into sessions with my clients, and how in session I'll see them change, or they'll bring in something that they saw or heard or learned through social media, and all of a sudden their opinion on something changes or their demeanor changes. It's a powerful, scary thing.
Yeah. And I think that also something that I know, have talked about, that groupthink, we project groupthink onto other groups, essentially.
Hmm.
I think that a lot of times people who look at the therapy world interpret the therapy world to be a monolith in certain ways and believe in certain causes and this and that. And I've seen a couple of my clients over the years who have been noticeably uncomfortable with sharing something that they perceive to be something that I would be at odds with, because of me just being in the therapy world, simply by the nature of me being a therapist. And one, the most important thing is that it doesn't matter what I believe. That's not what my role as a therapist is. So it's about being able to be present for my clients. And I think it's really harmful when now we're projecting groupthink. And I think it's a very natural thing that we're not really aware of, onto groups of people, where in this particular subsection of the world, that our clients might not be getting the proper help they need, because they're afraid to say something to their therapist that might be at odds, potentially or not, with their belief system, and you think that you won't be treated the same way. And
Right.
that is incredibly heartbreaking to me, because again, it doesn't matter what my belief system is. I have clients who I know agree with the things that I would think and disagree with the things that I would think, and they are treated 100% the same. And I don't view any of them differently, above the others or less than the others. So I think it's really harmful in that as well. And I think that specifically when we're talking about the therapy world, it's damaging that there is groupthink in the therapy world and projecting onto a narrative that could be very damaging for some people.
Absolutely. And I guess that also ties in with this concept of really putting certain people on a pedestal in social media that can very seriously harm you. And that can definitely be specified depending on what it is that you struggle with, what your vulnerabilities are, and how those people feed into that. But if you're following something, a page, a person, you know, a thought process, a belief that could potentially be damaging, it has a lot more power than I think people realize. And I know I keep using the word power in this conversation, but I cannot even think of a better word, because that's really, the more and more we delve into this conversation and the ins and the outs and the positives and the negatives and how influential it is in everyone's lives day in and day out and in so many things that we do, it is scary, the power that it holds. And I think it's something we really have to internalize to make sure we do not give it that level of power,
Hmm. Yeah.
because we have the power to take that power away
Mhm.
and to create um safe walls and boundaries for that to not happen.
Yeah. It's really, I hope that we're able to come full circle, and I think that we are in today's session, to be able to give you some tips on how to reclaim control. And before we get to that, I know we're having so many points that we want to touch upon, but I do want to address some of the emotional and mental consequences, in addition to some of the things that we had mentioned in the conversation that we've had so far. I want to address comparison fatigue. I said earlier about comparing your bloopers to everyone else's highlight reels. It could be really exhausting when you are just constantly putting yourself against other people. And oftentimes, what we find is that it's never a fair comparison. It's always, this person is perceived to have more than me, be prettier than me, be thinner than me, whatever it is that you perceive to be better. And one of the things that I talk about with my clients is like, okay, if we're going to go down the comparison route, we at least have to do this fairly. In what ways are you doing better than someone else? And we have to address those things as well, and not always just be negatively comparing ourselves in an unfavorable light to other people. We talked a little bit about we haven't labeled it, but doom scrolling. And this is where people will, especially when it comes to like Instagram or TikTok, where it just is natural, like you just keep going and it brings you to the
Mm-hmm.
next thing, the next thing. We can start off in such a great mood, for an example, and one thing come across the timeline. I don't really know what it's called. The For You page, I think. I don't know. I'm not great at social media, guys. I learn a lot from my clients, but something that you have where, something comes up in the algorithm and all of a sudden it captures your attention. We are more inclined, and the algorithm knows this, the powers that be know this, we are more inclined to spend time on negative things. So there could be a cat video that is like super cute, or a baby laughing hysterically. And that's awesome. It gives us a little bit of a chuckle, but we don't really spend a lot of time on that. We'll then, if we go into something negative, we tend to just keep going down that rabbit hole. And before we know it, we're in a really not great place at best, and at worst, really feeling perhaps a devastation about the world. There's a lot of things, and we were never ever meant to know everything that happens in the world, but every bad thing that's happening in the world, we have access to at our fingertips, and also all the made up stuff that's happening in the world, or exaggerated things that people will want to talk about to try to create narratives or create distrust for certain people or entities. There's a lot, and it could be really overwhelming, to say the least. It's also very natural to have these dopamine hits, whether it's the dopamine of getting to the next video and just keep going down that rabbit hole. There's a lot that goes with that, but especially when it comes to people liking your comments or liking your content or commenting, that could be so damaging on one end, but it could also be the liking, it could be really a dopamine hit. And
Yeah.
then if you get, let's say, 10 likes on a photo, and then the next time you only got 5, that it's never going to be enough. Then you might go down this rabbit hole of, well, why did I not look as good at this picture as I did in that picture? And it could be really damaging to get stuck in that dopamine just cycle and keep getting the hits, because it's like a drug. You're always chasing that first high, and we can't always
Mm-hmm.
get that. And unfortunately, a lot of times we derive our self-worth and self-value in a like and in positive comments, and that's not great, of
Yeah.
course.
Addiction to social media is very much a real thing. And how Steph said, the scrolling, it people have quite literally developed it, either worsened ADHD, ADD, or have developed it if they didn't even have it. Like the attention span since social media has come out is crazy. I've actually had a lot of people tell me that since they started spending time on social media, they have a really hard time watching movies or reading books because their brain just cannot stay focused on one thing. So don't worry, guys, if you can't stay focused during our entire podcast, I'm going to just say that that's why. Um,
Hopefully we're focusing for that tidbit.
right, exactly. But these are real issues that come up with social media, and the dangers of needing external validation to feel worthy and valued and enough, and not need, whether it's whether your page is on private and it's your own group of friends giving you that validation, or waiting for the world to tell you that you're good enough, waiting to go viral, trying to spend all day, all week, all month, all year figuring out, why does this person have 100,000, 500,000, 1 million plus followers, and I'm stuck at 2,000, at 500, at whatever it is. If your brain is doing that all day long, you are going to have so much resentment towards the world, towards yourself, and just like constantly be at war with yourself. Um, and that's really where a lot of it comes into the space of mental health and self-worth, self-confidence. I see that very much, and I'm sorry that I sound a bit like a broken record, but it intertwines a lot with eating disorders, with depression, with anxiety. It's a lot of weight to carry, to
Mhm.
wait for the whole world to approve of you. And sometimes we don't go into social media thinking that way, but a lot of the time that's what ends up happening, and people don't even realize that that's what's happening.
Yeah, I compare it to with my clients to the story of the Three Little Pigs. And what I say is that when you're looking for external validation, it's the equivalent of building your house out of straw or feathers or whatever to sand. This first gust that comes along, it's going to end up just dissipating. It's not something that is a firm foundation. And what we need to do is building a firm foundation where you are able to validate yourself and it's not dependent on outside factors, because there's a million and one reasons that that's not going to be helpful. And we could dive into all of that, but it probably would take us a really, really long time to do that. And also, Rachel, I'm so glad that you had brought up about the focus. It's something that I hear a lot from my clients, where a lot of my clients will say, I think I have ADHD. And I always say, like, well, let's not jump to that, and let's kind of understand why that might be happening and why you might see that happening. And I believe that social media has really fragmented our attention spans. And this is absolutely supported by studies and whatnot. And there's a really great book that I would recommend that everyone read. It goes deep into this. It's called Stolen Focus. I'm forgetting the name of the author right now, but I'm pretty sure if you look it up on Amazon or something like that, you'll see it, one of the top books. It's a really enlightening book. So I would encourage anyone to see that or to read that, listen to it on audio or whatnot. And the last part that I really wanted to address here, and we talked about it, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but about cyberbullying. And this can happen not only in adolescence, it can happen to people of any age. And I see a lot of people talking about the toxicity at minimum that their social media can bring. I think there's a lot of great things that social media can bring, but there's also a lot of negative things that it can bring. And I'm not here to say that what outweighs what, but maybe it's more dependent on your specific circumstances. But there's I've seen people who are adults who have gotten bullied or attacked, especially when it comes to groupthink, that if they go into enemy territory, whatever that might look
Yeah.
like, comment on something, then all of a sudden they get attacked. And it's not just about the idea of getting attacked, which I think that there's a absolute platform that we can have healthy debates, but unfortunately they're personal attacks and they're very nasty and mean. And it's just a strange thing that we've gotten into, where we no longer see people with different viewpoints as people or as good people. It's such
Mhm.
a divided world. And I don't think social media in any way helps that.
Yeah, and I think it's easier for people to bully behind a screen, and it's very much, I think it's I think it's a chicken or the egg. I don't know which came first, but the whole concept of cancel culture, we're just in this world where, like, if you do one thing that's seemingly wrong or seemingly anti, what everyone else is thinking or doing, no matter how big or small the thing that sided with was. I could literally talk about like how to bake a brownie and like what goes into it. And it's just like ridiculous. And, that person, it's like no one will ever hear what they have to say about baking ever again for the rest of the time. It's just like this need to judge people, to get rid of people. I don't know if it makes them feel better about themselves. It gives them like a high. They're able to just say and do whatever they want and hide behind the screen, and seemingly there are no consequences. But there are two human beings, one on one side of the screen and one on the other. And people forget that. Like, there is a human being reading that.
Mhm.
And, as you said, no matter how young, no matter how old, these this cyberbullying is affecting people's lives.
Yeah, it could be really costing people's lives.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that, but I think it's true. And something that we have heard before, and I'll reiterate it. we used to deal with bullies when we went to school, and then we go
Mhm.
home and that was done. And it's never good to have bullies or anything or bullying. But now it's happening well beyond our school years, but also when during the school years, it's happening after school. It's happening constantly, and it could be so much less obvious. It's not a black eye anymore. It could be something that it's you have no idea that your child's going through it or that someone's going through it. It's really important to be mindful and be aware if you're a parent, it's and whoever you are, for yourself to reclaim control over social media and your use of it.
Yeah, there are many, I don't know many, but there were a good amount of movies actually created to explain how this can happen, what it might look like, how scary and dangerous it can be. I know one of them is literally called Cyberbully.
With Emily
But
Osment, I've been thinking about this all of our sessions so
why?
far.
Because you've seen the movie.
Yes, yes. It was. I remember Emily Osment, and when we talked about cyberbullying, I kept bringing my imagery back to watching that movie. It was awful. What had
So I
happened?
think there are actually three different versions of a movie called
Probably,
Cyberbully. Then
probably.
there are other movies about things just in what was that entire series on Netflix that everyone was completely obsessed with?
Oh my gosh, we talked about this so much. The
16
13
tapes.
Reasons Why.
13 Reasons Why. I think it was like 16 tapes. What? We're not going to get into this
No.
show, but what I will say is it can show how dangerous social media is,
Hmm.
but we are not here to promote watching it. I think there are a lot of things in that show that are I did
Probably.
not like need to see that. It's very graphic. I think to a certain degree it could potentially romanticize suicide. So there are a lot of issues with that series, but I think the concept behind it, which is just bringing awareness to what's going on with young adults and just minors today, it is an important message and it is very scary. So
Hmm.
keeping that in mind. But we are not helpless. We are not hopeless. There are many different things that we can do to reclaim control. So we're going to give you guys a couple of them. Hopefully you can leave with that so you don't have all of this negativity and you're like, okay, great, guys, what do we do now? So, I think something that's very big in the mental health space is setting boundaries, right? We talk about boundaries all the time. This they're not invisible here. This is completely an applicable space to utilize boundaries, and that can look different for every single person. And setting also, we will say, realistic boundaries for yourself. Like I tell clients a lot of the time, especially because just social media and your phone in general can cause a lot of sleep problems and sleep disturbances. If you're having trouble going to sleep, this very much could be a reason why. I tell them stay away from your phone an hour before you want to go to sleep. For a lot of people, that's extremely unrealistic. So if that's unrealistic, either replace it with something else like reading a book or listening to music and keeping whatever place your music is coming out of away from you, or cut it out 30 minutes before you go to bed, 15 minutes before you go to bed. Don't fall asleep with your phone in your hand. It does ruin your sleep regulation, your quality of sleep. It could affect how long you're awake before you fall asleep. It is a real issue, but cutting around your sleep hygiene, your night routine, your phone can help with sleep. That's just like one boundary that you could set. I know, Steph, you had a couple of ideas around, the concept of social media detox, if you don't mind sharing some.
Absolutely. So I'm a big, big fan. And this is something that I talk about with my clients. And social media detox can be looking like a couple different things and or timelines really. It could be something that if you're constantly online, just getting off of social media for like 2 hours, and that could be the biggest triumph you have right then. I think it's important to try to expand it a little bit, and if you can get up to a day or two, that'd be really awesome to give yourself a break. It's also good to it's like the absence makes the heart grow fonder. It could make it a little bit easier when you do go back onto social media. Maybe you'll find more joy in it like you used to, as opposed to it just being something you automatically have to log onto. It can be so, so difficult though to do a social media detox. I share this a lot, and I said it a little earlier on in the podcast, that I personally don't have any personal social media accounts. I had a Facebook and I got rid of it circa 10 years ago now at this point. And I could tell you it took at least a month where I didn't automatically click on the space where Facebook was on my phone. It was just something I wasn't even paying attention to, but it becomes such a just knee jerk reaction to do. So be mindful about that. And the reason why I say that is because maybe to help facilitate your social media detox, you move the app on your phone to help you to be more conscious of what it is that you're looking for, giving you a chance to redirect. You might log out and not have your password saved. It gives you, again, another avenue that you can go down. Like, do I really want to log in? Just another check. Like, I want to do the social media detox, and it can help you. So I would say that ideally, if you can do it at least a couple of days, and I would do it regularly. If you do it 1 or 2 days a month, that'd be great. There's not one right formula for it. Figure out what works for you and be flexible with it. But I think that it would be really good for not only your mental health, but also your relationship with social media and how it does impact you and make you feel.
Absolutely. I know as an Orthodox Jew, we already do this because on the Sabbath, we can't use our phones. So I will tell you, it's so interesting because I think a lot of people say like they have an anxiety when they're not able to touch their phones. I almost get a level of anxiety when the Sabbath ends and everyone goes back to their phones.
Mm.
And it's almost like you can't even not look because you have to know what's going on in the world with work, with news, with this, with that. And I'm almost like, no, just a few more hours of peace. I don't run to my phone. I like wait for a while before I look at it again. But I want to tell you, as somebody who every single week doesn't touch my phone for more than 24 hours, yeah, it's amazing. And quite frankly, I think if it didn't cause me certain problems with certain things, like not being able to contact certain people that I need to be able to contact, I would do it for longer than a day because it's awesome. Another thing I don't know if you guys are aware of, there are apps that you could put on your phone. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think it's a setting on the phone. I believe it's an app where it will give you a time limit of how much time you could spend on a certain app on your phone, how much screen time, how much social media time. That way, A, you can track it, and B, it will literally let you know like time's up. You know, I don't know if you've noticed, but hey, you've been scrolling for literally 3 hours. And that's also a really wonderful way. I don't know if it still does this because I don't have time to watch that level of TV, but like I know Netflix used to have this thing where it's like, hey, are you still there? Are you okay?
It still does. Yeah.
I would do that a lot because COVID, like when COVID first started and I wasn't a mom yet, and you know, I think a lot of people were utilizing their TV time and their movie time and their show time. And every time my husband and I saw that message, we would crack up. And at one point, I think we looked at each other and we were like, are we okay? Like, should we turn this off? Like,
to be fair, it's like after 3 episodes.
Yeah, it's like you can lose yourself. You can lose yourself in screens, you know, not even social media, just screens in general. And just holding yourself accountable for how much time, like, you know what, if you're somebody who like needs entertainment, I'm not even saying turn it off, but maybe utilize something else, like read a magazine, read a book, try a podcast that's still different, listen to some music, like just something else. Like get your eyes off of the screen, I guess is my point.
It's really good, not only for our eyes, of course, but also just doing something different. I think that podcasts have a tendency to be a little bit more engaging, but also with the focus piece of it, it can be really helpful to do something where maybe there's an educational component or something where you have to pay attention for longer periods, not only for the focus piece, but I really do believe that by having so much thrown at us at any given point with a lot of the apps that are like 1 minute videos or something like that, the constantly switching back and forth or switching to different things creates more anxiety and mental noise. So even if you feel like you need something, you need some sort of content to be listening to or watching, doing something with a longer time frame could be really helpful. And it's a lot about being intentional. And with that being said, well, I just wanted to take a quick moment then to go over to our listener question. And the listener question is very related to today's topic, is how can I tell if I need a break from social media? Any initial thoughts, or I could go first?
I mean, I have thoughts, but you can totally go first.
Okay. I know. I'm like, okay, so I'm trying to see what we might not have talked about initially, but trusting your instinct with it. When you know that you're going on and you are starting to, like, you always leave feeling negative or anxious, or where you are signing off in a more negative place than you signed on in, that is going to be a really good indication that you need a break. You need to be more intentional with your social media use. Maybe that might mean unfollowing certain accounts. Maybe that might mean doing a social media detox. Maybe it might mean just silencing certain notifications or whatnot. But listening to how it is that your body, your mind, and overall your emotional well-being responds to the social media could be a really good indication.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're constantly finding yourself running to your phone, running to open up an app, feeling like a FOMO when you're off of it for an hour or two, it might be time for a detox. Also, and something, that I kind of just want to add to our previous point in terms of getting important information. If you're finding all of your answers, if you're gaining all of your education on social media, and I know we talked about, having certain like people that you look up to on social media, please just be careful what information you are adapting into your life, what you're choosing to believe. Do your research. And like Steph said, if you need to block an account, if you need to just, unfollow something, do what you got to do to protect your mental health and your sanity and your safety and your happiness. And, don't be scared to take those extra steps for sure.
Mm-hmm. So to wrap all of this up, we're asking you to reflect on what's one thing you could do this week to protect your mental health. And if you're willing to share your answers, your thoughts, we would love to hear it, as well as you can email or message us or comment on Instagram, or like I said, our email with any experiences or thoughts you have about this podcast, or questions that you have that has a chance to be one of our next listener questions. And also, just a quick side note, Rachel and I were talking, and we were hoping that at one point we can have an episode just answering your questions and have a special version, maybe a cocktails and counseling version of our coffee and counseling. So our Instagram is at Coffee and Counseling Podcast. Our email is coffeeandcounselingpodcast@gmail.com. You could find all links to everything in our show notes, and we'll be back again next Tuesday, and we look forward to joining you again.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Please follow our Instagram at Coffee and Counseling Podcast and send any questions you have about any topic to us via direct message for a chance for your question be featured in one of our next sessions. You can also email us your questions or topic suggestions at coffeeandcounselingpodcast@gmail.com. Make sure to check out some of our other sessions available to you right now. Once you drink up all of those and your coffee, come back next Tuesday for our next session.
The information shared in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute therapy or mental health advice. Listening to this podcast does not establish a therapeutic relationship between you and the hosts. If you are in need of support, we encourage you to seek help from a qualified mental health professional. This podcast is not a substitute for individualized care. We do offer individualized therapy. If you're interested in individual therapy with one of us, please visit our practice websites and send us an email to set up a free consultation call. All of the links and our contact info will be in the show notes.